Hey, what's up? So I'm a little bit sick. I apologize if I start coughing during this. I have a handful of comments for you, and I'm going to try and keep this under 10 minutes. This is the third period of your bout, and you've just staged a comeback to 8-9. And the first thing I want to look at is just the very first thing in the video. This thing. Alright, this is your biggest problem. It happens in so many of your touches, in so many of the touches throughout this bout. And it's really bad, and it all comes down to the fact that you're standing up instead of an on guard. Alright, so let's have a look at exactly what happens here and what it's making you do. Alright, so he begins his lunge, and you take a little step backwards. You can see it there. A little tiny swing of a step. Then you juke your hips back, like that. So now your center of gravity is being shifted over this leg as your hips move back. And because you're clashing with him, you're going to end up bending over in a minute. Also watch your foot here. Right now, it's pointed more or less forward. And as you step back, your foot is going to turn this way. And following it, naturally enough, is your knee, which is a bigger concern. Foot can point inwards. Even the knee can point inwards a little bit, but you don't really want it to be pointing out here, like a right angle to the strip. As your knee turns this way, your hips start to follow it. And we can see how this part of your hip is heading that way, and this part of your hip is heading that way. And as that turns, oh my goodness, your shoulders are turning too. Your forward shoulder is coming out this way, your back shoulder is going out that way. Eventually, your back shoulder is more in this direction, and your front shoulder is more in that direction. So compared to the beginning, your shoulders have basically switched the sides of your body that they're on. And here, this is a relatively forward pointed posture that you're in. This posture is okay because you're able to aim at him. But this posture is not okay because your body is pointing this way and your arm is thrown out over here and your tip is therefore thrown out over here. So you're pointing off in this direction. You want to avoid that. You want to avoid this kind of twisting of the hips in particular. That can really throw your blade. And you want to avoid twisting of the shoulders. Relatedly, you also want to avoid at the shoulder, letting it roll over to the inside of your chest too much. To illustrate what I mean, if you extend your hand toward the wall and you keep your hand directly in line with your shoulder, and then you allow your hand to move over to the left in front of your chest a little bit, you will see that the effect on the tip, if you're holding an epee, is quite large. Your tip is going to move a great distance. This is, like the arc subtended by an angle on a circle, right? If you move here a couple degrees, this long line that you have made by your arm and your epee, although the angle is only a couple degrees, the arc that it moves is quite large. So even a little bit of motion here can end up throwing your tip by inches or perhaps even feet. And that's sort of what we're seeing here, is that your shoulder is moving in this big arc from its initial position in this relatively square posture all the way over to here, and it's pulling your tip from up here more or less pointed at him to all the way over here somewhere. All of this, also, notice, sorry, just real quick, because you've switched your weight on top of this leg, when you end up trying to go backwards more, you just end up hopping onto this leg, but your foot there is in exactly the same spot as your back foot was. So you haven't really moved very much there. And that's all because your center of gravity was over this spot. Anyway, to fix this problem, you need to avoid turning your hips, of course, and you need to have a proper on guard, which is going to be way deeper, like more right angle-y, not quite a right angle, but more right angle-y than this is. A good on guard, if you watch high-level fencers, like they look very natural in those positions, but if you try and match exactly how they are with the depth in it, I think you'll be surprised just how deep an on guard is. And having a good on guard is beneficial for other reasons. It lets you push off with your back foot and front foot with a great deal more force than when you're standing, and over a greater distance. Like if you're in a deep squatted position and you lunge out of it, you're going to travel much further forward than you would otherwise standing up like this. So anyway, fix your on guard and practice retreating and advancing correctly instead of juking your hips back or crossing over or standing up or any of that stuff. I think it'll make a huge improvement for you. Anyway, that's fine. So skip ahead to the next thing. I think it's right around here somewhere. And this is a pretty minor thing. Yep, here it starts. Look how you're bouncing around. Let's go back a little bit. Whee! So you're in the air here. You're completely in the air. Right? So here you are. This is where you're standing when you start this thing. You jump backwards, and both of your feet leave the ground as you stand straight up and bend forward slightly. So first of all, you're off balance in the air. And secondly, you're in the air. The épée bounce is not an up-down action. You know, when you're doing bouncing, you're not looking to travel vertically. You're looking to travel horizontally. So when an épée bounce actually causes a fencer's position to change, they're usually taking a short hop forward or backward, or hopping forward and backward constantly. They're not going up and down. Even when standing still and doing an épée bounce, usually this part of the foot, the ball of the foot, remains in contact with the ground, and the legs simply straighten a very tiny amount. Because you always want your feet in contact with the ground. That's the only thing you can push off of to change what direction you're moving in. So it's the same problem as when you're standing up and bending over in the earlier bit. It deprives you of the ability to move. Oh, also incidentally, notice that whenever you jump up like that and try and flick around, you always follow it with turning in the air. Often you have turn before you even jump, so you're aimed this way. It throws your tip off the line, and you end up having just zero chance of delivering those actions. And yeah, every time you jump, that happens. Alright, let's jump forward now. Alright, so at this point, he has switched over to a more defensive posture. You run by him, that's good. That's fine, no complaints there. What I wanted to see is this next touch. Alright, look at where his blade is, and look at where you are. What you have done here, and this is the same for the last light, and it's the same for the next light, is you have run into his blade as he extends it. I think that you're rushing a little bit too much, that you're trying to like speed toward him so fast that you're able to hit him before he's able to hit you, but no matter how fast you are, if you go into his blade, it's going to go off. Instead, you need to slow down a little and think about the mutual position you're both in. Because this guy's common action throughout the bout is to extend his arm like this and stick it straight out. And he does that whenever you aggressively push at him. So you should be thinking about taking a 6 or an 8 or a 4 or something here, doing something with his blade before finishing. I think a 6 would be a reasonable choice, and I think you'd have a better chance of getting a 1 light. And to do that, you need to be in control of your footwork so that you're able to pause, to stop, or to accelerate as needed. But here you're just sort of barging in at him and you go right into his blade. So you want to be aware of that, and you want to think about how you can control the blade. You don't need to fight his blade, of course, but you can't just ignore it either. You know, you need to displace it, control it, or at least account for it if you're going to launch an attack like that. So that's everything that I've got. If you have any questions, just ask in the comments. I'll try and answer, and I hope that this is helpful.